Earlier this morning, we had an IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match between Kazuchika Okada and Jay White at Dominion. Jay White beat Okada and is the new IWGP World Champion. That surprised me. I was not expecting a title change here, but very cool to see Jay White once again in the driver's seat. I feel like he's just been kind of on the back burner almost for so long, with the pandemic and everything. And I know he's been doing his thing on New Japan Strong, and he was making appearances in Impact. He's no longer making appearances there. But now he's the IWGP champion again. And this is important because on Dynamite on Wednesday, after his match with David Finlay, Hangman Adam Page got on the mic and he challenged Okada to a match for the IWGP title at Forbidden Door. He said, it doesn't look like I'm going to be getting a rematch anytime soon for the AEW World title, but I realize that there's more than one World Championship in wrestling. Can you imagine Vince McMahon agreeing to allow somebody, one of his top stars, to go out on his show and acknowledge the fact that, you know what? I may not be getting a match with Roman Reigns anytime soon, but I realize there's more than one World Championship in wrestling. I cannot even fathom it. But that's what Hangman Page said on Wednesday, and he challenged Okada and said he wants to go after the IWGP title. So it looked like maybe that was the direction they were going to go in. Of course, Adam Cole then interrupted the promo, and he said he should be the one going after the IWGP title. Maybe they were going to do a three-way. Then we get to this morning, and Jay White wins the title. After the match, Jay White called out Hangman. He said, "You want Okada? You want Okada? You can have him. But you're not fucking getting this." And he held up the IWGP belt. He called him a dumb cowboy bitch. And he talked about this now being the era once again of the Switchblade. Now we wait and see if Hangman can convince Jay White to change his mind in the next, 2 weeks. It doesn't seem like a lot of time there to convince the man to change his mind. Instead of a three-way for the IWGP title, this may end up as a tag team match. With Hangman and Okada as partners, I could see them coming together as tag team partners against Jay White and Adam Cole. Because Okada does not have another obvious opponent for the pay-per-view, and he's got to be on that show. Bryan Danielson still doesn't have a match either, but Zack Sabre Jr. issued a challenge to him backstage earlier this morning. He called out the American Dragon. He called his shot. He asked if he could take time out of his busy schedule with the Blackpool Country Club, which got a pop out of me, to find out who the best technical wrestler in the world is. So it looks like we're going to get Danielson against Zack Sabre Jr. at Forbidden Door. Where that leaves Okada, I don't know, unless you do a tag team. Now, you could just do a singles match, non-title, between Hangman and Okada. I actually think the tag match is probably the way to go, the way things are shaping up. Not a stretch to see Jay White and Adam Cole be tag team partners, right, given their history. But you should absolutely track down Jay White's post-show promo. Once he got to the back, he cut this 5-minute promo. It was fantastic. He just buried everybody. He basically claimed the only reason AEW even exists today is because everybody left New Japan when they realized they couldn't beat Jay White. So we have Switchblade to thank for the last 3 years, not Tony Khan. We now know what the main event at Forbidden Door is going to be for the Interim AEW World Championship. Hiroshi Tanahashi beat Hiroki Goto this morning. I know that's shocking to you. To earn the spot opposite Jon Moxley, Moxley is finally going to get his one-on-one match with Tanahashi, and the stakes could not be any higher. So now we know what the main event is going to be. No surprise there. No surprise about what the outcome is going to be. I know some people, why not put the title on Tanahashi? I'd be all for it, but Tanahashi ain't going to stick around. In fact, I'll talk about the G1 in a second. Tanahashi's already been announced for the G1 next month. He's not winning the AEW title. You know what? I won't completely disqualify the possibility because I could see Tony Khan maybe, even if he doesn't have access to Tanahashi, a lot of his time. Let's put the interim title on him so that when Punk does come back, we can deliver the match that we originally teased. And we could still get to Punk against Tanahashi, champion against champion. It's a nice idea in theory. But we'd have no idea when Punk is going to come back. He may not be back until close to the end of the year. That would defeat the entire purpose of having an interim champion. To put the title on somebody who's not going to be around when the whole reason for doing this is because your champion is not going to be around. The title is going to Jon Moxley. Will Ospreay pinned Sonata this morning to win the vacant IWGP United States title after Juice Robinson was stripped of the championship for what they claim was him reneging on his promise to defend it at Dominion. That was a cover reason for the fact that he still is recovering from appendicitis. He just won the title less than a month ago. You know, he probably won't be gone for very long, but New Japan, boy, they don't waste any time stripping people of these titles. This is the second time since April that the U.S. title has been vacated. Sonata was forced to give it up in April after suffering a fractured orbital bone. And when the match was over, there was no belt to present to Ospreay because Juice Robinson is still in possession of the physical belt. But Ospreay showed up on Dynamite this week. He made his AEW debut. He and the United Empire, they attacked FTR, they attacked Roppongi Vice. And then Ospreay made his in-ring AEW debut on Friday night on Rampage, and he lost. His team lost in Ospreay's very first match, with Trent Beretta getting the pin. A questionable decision. But it has me thinking that him losing there, it just has to set up a win for him at Forbidden Door in whatever match he ends up in. Jeff Cobb and Great-O-Khan, they won back the IWGP Tag Team titles this morning. FTR has said they want those belts. So does Roppongi Vice. I would rather they just give FTR the shot on June 26th. Jeff Cobb and Great-O-Khan defend the IWGP Tag belts against FTR. And then you can have Will Ospreay defend the U.S. title one-on-one against Trent Beretta, and he can get his win back. But I mentioned the G1. One of the big announcements on the show today was they announced the lineup for the 32nd annual G1 Climax, which kicks off next month. And it is the biggest field in the history of the tournament. 28 entrants spread out across 4 blocks. We don't know what the blocks are yet, but the entrants include Okada, Tama Tonga, Tanahashi, Filthy Tom Lawler in his first G1, Jonah in his first G1, Yoshihashi, Hiroki Goto, Toru Yano, Tomohiro Ishii, Jeff Cobb, Great-O-Khan, Will Ospreay, who might be my pick as the early favorite, Aaron Hinare, Shingo Takagi, Sonata, Tetsuya Naito, Jay White, Evil, Kenta. God, Evil. What a waste of a spot. Kenta, Yujiro Takahashi, Bad Luck Fale, Chase Owens, Juice Robinson, Tai Chi, Zack Sabre Jr., Lance Archer, David Finlay, and El Phantasmo. Lance Archer, making his first G1 appearance in 3 years, he is the only AEW name in the tournament. That is disappointing. That is a letdown. And it's not meant to be a knock on Archer. Archer is big in Japan. He's got a history there. His name got a nice pop from the crowd when they were running down the list of all the entrants. This is a crowd that is still not allowed to make any noise, except with their hands. And they popped for him. But I wanted to see more AEW names than that in this tournament, especially when I saw they opened up the 8 extra slots. You know, before they ran down all the names, they were showing the graphic on the screen, and all of a sudden these 8 extra slots opened up, and I thought, oh, okay, here we go. Here we go. We're going to get more than one AEW name. It might not be all 8, but okay, they have to announce a few names now. And then we ended up with Lance Archer. Bryan Danielson is the one I really wanted in there, but he's been pretty vocal that he does not want to go to Japan until cheering is allowed again. And it looked like they were heading down that road. They were going to lift the restrictions on not being allowed to cheer. They still have a lot of these, COVID restrictions in place there. And at least as of this morning, they still were not allowed to cheer. So who the hell knows when they'll be allowed to. I wouldn't be shocked if we come to find out that he said no. Until I know that that's allowed again, I don't want to go over there. I want to wait. I want to hold off until the time is right. He would also be a pretty big name, though, for Tony Khan to lose for a few weeks. But the fact that it was just Lance Archer was very disappointing. Now on Dynamite this week, Kyle O'Reilly won a 21-man casino battle royal. To open the show, the winner would go on to challenge Jon Moxley at the end of the show to see who would go to Chicago to fight for the interim title. Kyle lost to Jon Moxley, but they had a hell of a match. I thought that was an excellent main event on Wednesday to set up the obvious match now with Moxley and Tanahashi. The Battle Royal, these are some of the names the Battle Royal on Wednesday had. They had Darby Allin, Eddie Kingston, Ray Phoenix, Ricky Starks, Lance Archer, Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland, Andrade was the Joker. No Hangman Page, who wrestled David Finlay on the show instead. Realistically, he should have been in the Battle Royal. It was ridiculous that he wasn't. No MJF. Now I know that was unlikely. I had pitched the idea of calling an audible here, have MJF sneak in and win, find his way in somehow, put the interim title on him. Let's have the summer of MJF. Let's get some, let's juice this thing up to the gills. Whatever they're doing, whatever angle they're running with him, they're playing the long game. He's been removed from the show intros. He's been removed from the advertising. There was a story this week that the executives of Warner Discovery had some kind of an edict. I think people misunderstood the story. As I understand it, it wasn't that Warner was mandating something. This was AEW going to them and saying, please remove him. Probably like, we're running some angle here. Could you please remove him from all of your, various videos and stuff? I don't think it came from the corporate end. That would make this a very different story if Warner went to Tony Khan and said, get this guy off your show. And made him the fucking Muhammad Hassan, like what happened with him when UPN didn't want him on their show anymore. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think people misunderstood that story. So there was no MJF on the show. Not even a mention of MJF on the show. No Bryan Danielson or Adam Cole because they're nursing some minor injuries. They should be back in action very soon. No Chris Jericho, who is away on a planned family vacation, according to The Observer. But also, no Penta, no Miro, no Malachi Black. They've all been entered into this All-Atlantic title tournament. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But they weren't on the show. So they've been put in this other tournament. So what? We're talking about the Interim World Championship here. These are some of the bigger names on your roster. Where were they on Wednesday? Why were they not in this tournament? Why did we end up with the fucking Gun Club? And people like that in this tournament. Or in this Battle Royal, I should say. No Wardlow. They at least attempted to have Wardlow explain why he wasn't in the Battle Royal. Later in the show, he came out and he said, you know what? CM Punk is the real champion. And when the day comes that I win and I challenge for the world title, I want CM Punk. I want it to be his shoulders I pin to the mat. I want him to be the one that I submit. So heal up, champ, and get well soon. And then he turned his attention to the TNT title and said that's the championship he wants to go after. It was a hollow explanation. It was such a reach. He should have been there too, and I know why they didn't, because they didn't want him to lose. That was their way of getting him out of the match. Either he wins the Battle Royal and he loses to Moxley, or he loses the Battle Royal. I would have had him in the Battle Royal, and he's dominant, and it looks like he might win, and then Smart Mark. He's in the middle of feuding with Smart Mark Sterling right now. He's going to be wrestling 20 security geeks in a handicap match on TV this week. You couldn't come up with a way to have Smart Mark and his security crew come out and try to distract him, and then it takes 10 fucking guys to dump him out of the ring? He loses nothing. That way you don't have to pin him. But for him to come out and say, well, I told AEW, don't put me in the Battle Royal, he just comes off as so dumb by saying that. What do you mean you don't want to be in the Battle Royal? You want to wait for CM Punk? You could go to the main event of Forbidden Door at the United Center and win the title, and then you'll get your match with CM Punk. It guarantees you a match with CM Punk. $1 million body, 10-cent brain on Wardlow. I thought that was stupid. Now, CM Punk did have his surgery on Wednesday. Supposedly it was a success. It went well. When they did the surgery, they found that the injuries to the bones in his foot were worse than they expected. So they were able to fix everything up, but I don't know what that means. If it was worse when they went in, that could mean a much longer recovery time. So the idea that, it's just a foot injury, he'll be back in a couple of months, maybe not. I wouldn't be so sure that even when they get to Chicago again in September, if they end up in Chicago for All Out, that he'll be okay for All Out. He could be out for a while. But Punk made it very clear that Tony Khan absolutely refused to let him vacate the title. Punk was going to relinquish the championship. He didn't want to, hold it hostage for the next however many months. And he said, Tony Khan flat out said, absolutely not. And Tony Khan loves the whole interim title concept anyway. He did that with the TNT title. Yeah, he's a UFC fan. He's buddy-buddy with Dana White. UFC does this interim shit all the time. So Tony Khan never seriously entertained the idea of taking the title off Punk.